Well, firstly, thanks so much, Rene, for joining me today. It's been a while, so once again, it's great to have you here. For anyone that doesn't know Rene is the assistant manager to the Australian men's national football team, and he was with Manchester United for 12 years. He was the first team coach working with Sir Alex Ferguson in terms of the backroom staff, and he's managed clubs like Fulham and Bromby. So, Rene, it's great to have you.
Well, thanks for having me on your interview, Gary. It's good to see you again.
Great. I guess the reason that I wanted to do this was I work in the technology fields, business. I think there's definitely a lot of crossover in terms of what we can learn from sport, and especially with yourself. So I'll jump straight in. I have three questions. I think the first one is from reading your book, which I'll touch on at the end, is really what I see when I go to business seminars is with successful people, they've they've done a course or they've done something innovative in their career early on. And what I spotted in your book was that you actually borrowed, I think, 10,000 Dutch guilders from your brother to hire a professional videographer to, I guess, get the attention of a Dutch manager, Will Cover, and to be his assistant. So the question for me is, like, how important was that in terms of the trajectory of your career, and where did that innovation come from?
Well, it turned out to be the most important thing that I've done, Gary, because that kickstarted my professional career in coaching and management, so on. But I think first and foremost, it starts with having a sort of a belief. When I grew up as a young kid, I loved playing football. I mean, I joined my local football club when I was 7. You were only allowed to join when you were 9. But I was always at the football club, and the coach at that time just gave me a chance to play, and I played for many years, with boys that were 2 years older than me. But as you're growing up, every young kid, and a lot of young kids, and I wasn't any different, you dream of becoming a professional footballer. And I grew up with the golden generation in Holland, with Johan Cruyff and Ruud Krol and Johnny Rapp and Wim Suurbier, all of those people. And they actually basically, in the World Cup 74, I was 10 at the time. That's when they really put Holland on the map, on the world map of football in the style that they played. Talking about being innovative and doing something different outside the box. That is exactly what Holland did with their coach at the time, Rene Meulensteen. Anyway, for me, for growing up, and obviously I went through the different ages and stages of growing up, and I was fortunate because I had a lot of good friends that were good footballers, so I played at a decent level, but we never really got picked out to, being scouted by a professional club, because scouting at the time wasn't what it is now. But I've got no complaints, because I really enjoyed my youth and growing up and playing football. But when I was sort of approaching 18 to go into the senior level, there was only one thing in my head I could think about, was football. I saw all my other mates go and study, going to work, going to this, and I just could not, for my life, see anything outside football. And I think that's where it starts, Gary, with a lot of time with people that are very successful. They got such a conviction and a determination about their passion that they will find ways to make it work. Now, when I made that video at that particular time, I was 27 when I joined the University of Sports in Holland, called the SEALS, Central Institute of Sports. And you can specialize yourself in different disciplines. Football is one of them, which I obviously did. And that video, and I borrowed those 10,000 guilders of my brother, was my final project of that study. And I wanted to use it as the final project, but also to use it to convince, as you said, Will Curver, who developed the Curver method, which was purely based on skill development. He's a Dutch coach. I invested a lot in reading up about him, and I just wanted to find a way to get it to him. And at the time, I was coaching at NEC Nijmegen, the youth, let's say the under 14s, and I basically did everything around Curver method. It was all skill development, it was all dominating the 1v1, etc. And it was early April when we played a game against the Graafschap, I think it was. We won 9-3. And I was watching the under-18s afterwards. And one of those kids' dads came up to me and he said, "Oh, Rene, listen, fantastic game this morning again. I absolutely love it. I can't believe the progress the boys are making." And he was just blah, 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 blah. So I said, well, that's why I can't understand why Holland, and especially the association, the KNVB, don't embrace the wheel curve method, because we would be so far ahead of everybody else in the world. And there's a guy standing next to me, a very big guy, big moustache. And he said, well, who are you to make that statement? And I said, well, it's not really important who I am, but I coach the under-14s here, and I'm a true believer in the curve method. And he says, funny enough, because I do as well, and he says, I am the one, the publisher, that wrote the preface in the book. He says, that's interesting. So I will start to talk to him about the video I was making. And he said, when you've got the video finished, come and see me, and I can see if I can get in touch with Wheel Curver. And I brought the video to him when it was finished. I edited it all myself. I wrote all the text about the voiceover, and I brought it to him. And the next day he rang me up and he said, Rene, I've already watched it 3 times. And he says, if Wheel Curver doesn't do anything with this, and he's the biggest fool on earth. And that was really the first connection. So when that came to Wheel Curver, he thought to himself, well, I better do something with this, because this boy understands. He understands what I'm coming from. He understands the way how I work and how I want to work. So, and that was the start. And Wheel Curver, invited me over to come and work with him as his assistant in Qatar. And I stayed in Qatar working with him for about 4 years. Then he left to the Emirates, and I stayed for another 4 years before I joined Manchester United. But that video and that determination in getting that right and getting to Wheel Curver was absolutely the kickstart of my career.
Well, the rest is history, as they say. No, that's really, really, really good to know. The other thing as well, I guess the second question is, anytime that we've spoken, you mentioned this to me, and I loved it, especially working in business, right? Language can be so important as well, like working in the technology field. You always mention, like, with players, you don't say, I want to change this, you say, I want to add this. So I guess it'd be good to understand the philosophy behind that, and also like why you think that works.
Because people in general respond better to positive reinforcement. I mean, that doesn't mean that you can't be critical, but it's something different than being negative. So if you want things to change, to alter, because things can be done in a better way with your people that you're working for, then it is the way how you send, how you send that message to those people. Now, for me, as a coach and work with these players who obviously already played at the highest level, they're performing at the highest level week in, week out. For me then to come in and say to the players, listen, we need to change this to your game, then straight away it's a negative signal. So the first reaction of the players will be, well, what do you mean change? What am I doing wrong? But if I say to those players, listen, whoever it was, I said, listen, if we can add this to your game, you become a complete player, you become more effective, or whatever it is, because add is more. And when you say add, people want to know what it is. And if they see, yeah, that's really good. They embrace it, they make it their own. And the next thing then is to empower them. And that was my line in. And that is what I started using when I was working with a lot of first team players, on an individual basis. So I would paint them the picture to say, this is your position. These are the moments that you get into. And I think if we can add this to your game, then I'm sure you're going to be a better player for it. And, a lot of times I could use that later on because I was watching all the games, and I used all the video footage that when they did it in the game and they were successful with it, I would grab them, off training and say, listen, have you got 5 minutes? Have a look at this. And I would show them clips of when they would not do it before, 2 or 3 or 4. And then I say, look, this is after we've done our sessions, and this is what you do now. And look what happens. And that's very, very powerful. I think adding your word to your vocabulary when you're coaching people around you is a very, very powerful word. Yeah.
Well, so they see the progress of before and after. So well, that's amazing. I guess maybe on a similar note, like the third question is on skill acquisition. And once again, and I feel in sales, like adding skills constantly in terms of questions that you get is definitely a big thing. But for you, it's really in like one-to-one situations, adding skills to get past the opponent, and then the rest of the pitch opens up. So I just wanted to ask about how important that was, and maybe you can give some examples perhaps. But I know Ronaldo and Rooney, like obviously great players, but for the lesser players with skill, like how important was that for them? And did you see a big change in their game from adding those sort of skills in terms of one-to-one situations?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the great thing for me at Manchester United when I got the opportunity to work with individual players, because they were all players in different positions. They could play, it could be Wes Brown that could play as a centre back, as a right back, or Gary Neville for that liking. They're all sort of established players. And a lot of times, and a lot of people have got this lazy sort of outlook or opinion to say, yeah, but you can't really teach them anything anymore at that age. Biggest nonsense in the world. If people want to learn, they can learn, and they will learn if it's presented in the right way. So what was good for me is to explain those players, why is it so important that you are able to dominate the 1v1? Whether somebody puts you under pressure, so you have to find a way out rather than just hoof the ball away, or you are getting into a 1v1 yourself in an attacking sense, and you want to go past people to create a better situation. Every 1v1 is there to be solved and to create a better situation. That's what it is for. But you need to have the tools to do it. And the reason why all those world-class players of past and present were world-class or got labeled world-class was because they had that element in their game. It doesn't mean all the other ones were probably very, very good players, but you always talk about the ones that made that class of being world-class in terms of players like Di Stefano, Puskas, Pele, Cruyff, Beckenbauer, Maradona, all of them through, Charlton, Eusebio, all the way up to Messi, Ronaldo, Mbappe, etc. A lot of things have changed in football, but that element hasn't changed. And what it does, because football is played basically only on two tracks, is based one in terms of combination football. Can we open up defenses by moving the ball quickly, or switching the play and breaking lines and in good combination play? And the other track is, can we create the same thing by outmaneuvering opponents, going past opponents? So you create an overload. If you've got both of them, then it makes you unpredictable. And that was my message to Man United, especially when I then joined as a first team coach, because I had these opportunities in the years before to work with probably most of all the players individually. So now the next step for me was, when I was working with the whole team, is to really integrate it in our style of play. It's constantly quick combination play, bang, 1v1. Quick combination, 1v1. So it was very, very hard. And you need to give the players that opportunity and freedom to express themselves, especially in the attacking sense. Because that freedom creates that unpredictability that is very, very hard to defend. But you can only have that creativity and being unpredictable if you've got the tools to do it. So you first need to add those tools. Now, the most important thing is that those tools are added as early as possible at grassroots level. So that's why I spent my first 6 years at Man United in the academy grassroots level to try to make sure that that was implemented at an early stage. So players who are playing for Manchester United now, like Marcus Rashford, he came through that particular system. So he doesn't have to think in the game if he has to do a step over or a Cruyff turn or whatever trick he's got it. It's there, and he can pull it whenever he needs it. So that is the best way forward. However, I convinced Sir Alex in my way that I said, listen, we can still add something to your first team between 1% and 5%. But if we only add 1% to every player, that's 10% more. That 10% will have a massive impact in us winning more games, and therefore probably winning more trophies. And that's how I got the chance to work with those players. And when I became the first team coach, it was even better, because then I could coach it into a team setting as well.
Yeah, no, and like 100% from knowing you, I noticed those little subtle differences, like whether it be a Wes Brown or whoever, and it makes such a big difference. Like you said, that little 1%. So yeah, no, really good. One more bonus question that I want to ask is, you're obviously training these world-class players, like they're trying to improve all the time. Like you as a coach, I guess it would be easy to say that I'm the first team coach of Manchester United. I know everything, but like, how did you constantly improve and even now improve as a coach?
Yeah, I think as also for players as well as, and I use that in terms of when I do my presentations to coaches or players alike, and that's not any different for coaches. The biggest advantage that we have now, Gary, is that we've got all the technology to our disposal. You know, anything you can find, you know, is a button away. You know, whether it's on socials, whether it's on YouTube, there's so much good stuff for everybody to go. For me, the starting point was always like, I'm from Holland and Dutch upbringing and you know, and the culture that we had in Holland and the way that we want to play and all that. But I'm not really a student of the Dutch KNVB, you know, because I always felt there were other ways to look at things, because obviously that's why I followed Curver, who was basically kept outside the door of the KNVB because of the way that he looked at how he thought that players should be developed. But for me, it's a very simple thing forward, and it's the same in your business, in your way. You have to look at what business are you in, right? Then you look at, okay, who are the best in our business? Are we the best? Then you have to find out the reasons why you are the best and better than your competitors. If you got competitors that are better than you need to find out why that is. Have you got a better product or have you got a better service? And then you need to fill in all the other aspects that is important to run an organization. So the question is, if you analyze the best and you can extract why they are the best, and that is exactly what I did by looking at the best football teams in the world, the best countries in the world that won the World Cup so many times. What is it? Why are they always there on the top? Why are the best players in the best teams in the different leagues? Why are they always winning the leagues? Why are the best teams in the Champions League? So if you know those ingredients, then you know what to look for as a manager, what to coach and try to, you know, to build a team around those specific qualities. One of the things is, again, most likely with all those best teams, they had the best players. And some of those players were world class. You know, I mean, Barcelona has been so good under Pep Guardiola for so many years because he had Messi. You know what I mean? Barcelona had Messi, simple. And you can go back to so many teams that are successful. You always find 1, 2, maybe 3 world-class players. Now, you then have to analyze why they are world-class. Why was Beckenbauer a world-class defender and more? Why was Charlton, Platini, and all of them? Why were they the best midfielders? And Zico? Why were Cruyff and Maradona and Pele and Van Basten? Why were they the best forwards? If you can analyze that and you know what the key elements are, you then know also what to develop in young players. And one of those important things is that skill development thing. You know, so what I'm saying is that the key to learn and keep learning is keep looking at the best out there. So for me as a coach, I always look and read up on what is Pep Guardiola doing at Man City? What's Klopp doing at City? What is De Zerbi doing now with Brighton? You know what I mean? Because he's different with the club, which is even more, almost more impressive because he's got lesser things to his disposal. So, and you look at other sports, other coaches, other managers in different sports, whether it's American football, basketball. There's great coaches over there where you can read up on motivational things, on leadership, and all that. Things evolve, you know, the technology, you need to keep pace with the technology and everything that's out there. So there's so many ways, but the key is if you have, and that is what I've adopted, I will keep learning as long as I live, because the moment you stop learning, you stop living. You know, because always, there's always something to get out of it. Even a simple, silly conversation with your mates in a pub can sometimes carry something that you think, hey, that's really interesting, that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it can be used in anything, not necessarily only your profession, but in normal walks of life as well.
Yeah. Oh, amazing, Rene. And actually, to finish on a lighter note, I must thank you because we had a tournament in Holland with you. It was an over 40s tournament, and we were having some underage players, which I was one. And I mean, I was representing Ireland. My dad was in goals. He wasn't great. I think we finished bottom of the group, but to this day, it like brings a smile to my face. So I have to thank you about that. Me and my mates will always talk about it. Just to finish off, I mean, your book, right? United, Sir Alex and Me. I think everyone should get this, regardless of if you're a Manchester United fan or not. I personally read it when I was flying over to the US recently, so it kept me company. So just want to sort of give that a bit of a plug. And once again, Rennie, thanks so much. Like really good answers, and I'll definitely be watching it back. And yeah, hopefully we'll speak again very soon.
Brilliant, top man, and I'll see you probably the end of this year.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Rennie. Cheers.
Gary, top man.